Hello, I'm Steve Austin. I'm a geologist and teaching with Cedarville University in Ohio, and I am with Logos Research Associates. And I'd like to talk to you today about Dead Sea water levels signal historic climate change, synchronizing amazingly with Bible history. And this is the paper I gave at the Evangelical Theological Society back in Denver, 2022. The Dead Sea is that area right there in the Middle East that is the lowest large saltwater basin in the world, and it's right there related to the Mediterranean climate, and it depends on wind direction what the climate gives. And wind from the northwest brings rain from the ocean, Mediterranean Sea, and wind from the southwest brings no rain. That comes from the desert area of Sahara. So that's a story. And so climate depends on wind pattern. Dead Sea water levels. Here's what I'd like to talk to you about. I'd like to talk to you about some people really love mud. And what do we call those people? They're called sedimentologists, okay? And Dead Sea, I would argue, has the world's best mud. Okay, if you're looking for world-class mud, this is definitely a place to go. And Dead Sea is a rain gauge proxy for ancient climate. I'll talk more specifically about why the climate change affects the lake level like a rain gauge. And then I'd like to talk to you about recent gully erosion, which exposes 4,300 years of history, which, because it's Dead Sea, it's Bible history, right? And then I'm going to talk about laminated mud is time calibrated by secular history, archaeology, pollen, radiocarbon, and earthquakes. I'll talk to you about how we calibrate sediment historically. And then I'd like to talk about the lake sediment layers synchronize remarkably with Bible history. And so that's where we're going. Okay, my mother noticed something, that I had this propensity for mud. And I don't know what happened, but I liked mud. And as a teenager, I started driving, and I loved driving in mud. And then what happened? I went for a PhD at Penn State University, and I did my PhD on the stinking mud of swamps. And so, yeah, it's great mud, but you know, there's alligators and snakes and bad things out there. But you got to get to be comfortable with mud. Well, Dead Sea has the world's best mud, and that's what I'll argue, and you'll hear the reasons why in a few minutes. But the Dead Sea level has been lowered because of man-made architecture and agriculture north, especially on the Jordan River. And the Dead Sea being lower has actually been good because it allows gullies to erode down into the layers of mud, like here, and you see the mud layers exposed, and the upper 4,300 years of mud is about 20 feet thick, something like that. Well, different kinds of mud. Onshore mud, that would be wind-blown debris. beach, okay, beach is usually sandy because of waves, and but the shore face offshore, maybe at a depth of 1 to 3 meters, right in there, that's the action area where wave activity winnows the fines, takes them offshore, and you have shallow lake mud, or throws them back up, sand grains back up on the beach. So then shallow lake mud is 3 to 20 meters in depth, and the Dead Sea gets to be quite deep, but the deep lake mud is definitely more than 20 meters in depth. And so you can see the different environments of mud deposition, but the onshore and the shore face and the beach is detritus dominated. That means it has clay minerals and feldspar minerals that make it unique, of course. And then the offshore mud, the deep lake mud, that's the chemical dominated mud. And so there you have calcium carbonate and other kinds of minerals that are not detrital. And that's the story on the different kinds of mud. Okay, so we're looking at a gully exposure, and at the top of the picture is the top of the cliff, and so that's reading down, about 15 feet or so into the layers, and you can see the different kinds of mud displayed. The lighter layers are deeper water kind of muds. That's the calcium carbonate dominated mud, the mineral aragonite especially. And then you see the gray and brown layers. Some of the gray and brown layers, prominent gray and brown layers, represent the shallow mud deposition. There are layers in there that are actually deep mud that are also dark, and that they're different mineralogy than regular detrital mud. And what's really interesting to me is down there at about 551 AD, down 15 feet or so, what do you see? You see a crinkled layer, series of layers, and that's an earthquake. That's an earthquake that displaced the floor of the lake and created the mud crinkles. We call that a seismite. And so seismic energy, and also see another one up in here. And so, yeah, the seismic waves deform the mud. Now, because no organism lives in Dead Sea mud, because it is the Dead Sea, there's not a lot of burrowing activity, and so the mud layers are really preserved well. And that's what creates the world's best mud, is it's very precisely laminated. And so you can see in all its glory. Take a look. There's a mud layer right there that is different mud than the other muds around it, and that's a mud layer from 800 AD, and that's a deep lake mud. But you see the other deep lake muds are calcium carbonate, the mineral aragonite, especially abundant there. And then you see these areas where the brown mud occurs, and then, of course, that's shallow water. So when I look at a cliff like that, what do I think? I see lake level, and I can imagine the lake level. I know it was about 390 meters below sea level when these last mud layers were deposited, and then I can see shallow and deep water. And here's a deep water mud layer right there, but that's dark. But the other areas, the shallow water and deep water, oscillate. And so when you look at mud, you think of water depth. You see how I see it? And so when there's a lot of spring rain activity coming into the shore face, that of course gives the detrital muds very obviously. And then you can see how precisely laminated it is. The technical term for this material is laminite. It's laminated mud, laminated, and then of course you can see some crinkled layers and evidence of earthquake. This extraordinary idea that you can think about the Dead Sea as a rain gauge, a proxy for ancient climate. And there's a lot of people who talk about climate change, and why not look at the real data of climate change in the sediment of the Dead Sea, especially in the mud layers. And the rain gauge idea is appropriate because there is a 15,000 square mile area, region all around the Dead Sea, and these rivers go into the Dead Sea Basin. So when the rain is abundant from the northwest, it raises the level of the lake, that type of thing. Dead Sea old shorelines are seen here. Here you go. Take a look at the old shorelines. You can see a bunch of them, and they're beach ridges. They're essentially where organic materials piled up by wave action, and where sediment coming in from the gullies and the mountain front leave their traces on the shore environment. But there is a beach ridge at 380 meters above sea level. It's right along the roadway that goes prominently on the west side of the Dead Sea. And so you can see a little bit about that. What is interesting is I know that beach ridge there has been carbon dated especially, and I've seen seismic evidence from the sediment associated with the beach ridge that's about 850 AD. So in the last 800, since 850, over the 1,000 years, the lake has been drawn down, as you see right there. And so you see lake level in sediment layers. I turned this view of the Dead Sea 90 degrees, so north is to the left, south is to the right, and you see the two basins of the Dead Sea. Now the North Basin is the deeper basin, and it has quite a depth, okay, and the South Basin of the Dead Sea is very shallow, and it's a place where salt evaporation ponds are. And so potash is harvested from the Dead Sea water, and it's a very fertile for agriculture. But the sill elevation is about 402 meters below sea level. So when the lake level is higher than 402 meters below sea level, when it's higher than 402 meters below sea level, the southern basin has water in it, and the northern basin is full as well. And so that's the sill. And today, even though the water level's 430 meters below sea level, the southern basin has a pumping system, so they pump saline water up into the southern basin to use the salt evaporation ponds. But the sill is the thing I'm pointing to here. At 402 meters below sea level and higher, that's where there's filling the southern basin. And here is a southwest corner of the North Basin called Wadi Zelim or Nahal Zelim. And there was a rare flood event that occurred, and the flood came through the channel system, and it cut this delta, or cut into the delta, and that's about 2013 AD. And I'd walked over that and found no channel originally. Then I came back after the flood event of 2013, and what did I see? A 20-foot deep gully, okay? And that really attracted me because I like mud. So I found a really good gully with a lot of mud in it. And that's the one that I'll show you. Southwest corner of the Dead Sea, and you can see some of this. What we do is we string wires across the gully and keep the wires tight, and we measure all the thicknesses below the wires, and that gives us the elevation of the lake at the time it was deposited. So Nahal Zelim Fan Delta surface elevation's 410 meters. So down there is, wow, that's below 420 meters, certainly 10 meters depth. So recent gully erosion to a depth of 10 meters exposes 4,300 years of layered lake deposits. And so we use belay ropes. See the belay ropes coming down from the side of the gully. We use the belay ropes and cut steps up into the sediment, and then we clear the sediment faces so we can see the layers, and that's the way it's done. And so you got to do a lot of digging, okay? And digging is a good thing for mud. A complete sequence of lake deposits without any erosional breaks. That's what's cool about that. There's no erosional breaks in that 4,300 years of history. So the bottom of the trench there is over 410 meters below sea level, and so that means that we've always had the lake there during that last 4,300 years. So really cool, isn't it? And that's the kind of thing we look for. And we measure the sediment thickness relative to the outcrop. So 410 meters below sea level is the present elevation of that surface, 410 meters below sea level. And then I can look back and I can see the sediment, you know, going back and forth like this, and I can see the different depths by looking at the amount of detrital characteristics. And so, yeah, it's been real interesting. There's a feature down here called a beach ridge. Right in here we found a beach ridge, so that's the shallowest water we found, but we never found an above lake deposit in this gully. So you can see the gully. Okay, if the water level is higher than 402 meters below sea level, then the southern basin is filled, right? And it's deep lake. Or when it's lower, okay, than 402 meters below sea level, then what? It's a shallow lake. And so you can kind of see lake level just by looking at this. You can kind of read the sediment that way, and then you need to calibrate it against history and earthquakes and a number of things. Okay, so you see what a sea level, a Dead Sea curve looks like. And so we imagine lake level, and then we have depth. Okay, but depth is, the deeper you go, the older it is. So what I want to do is take the lake level curve and not calibrate it by depth, but by what? By doing something radical to it. I turn it sideways, and then I replace depth with years before present. Do you see how I imagine that? So I imagine this, okay, depth versus level, and then I imagine time, lake time, and there's calibration BC and AD. So I always show recent on the right, and then going back in history on left. So I've made a timeline out of Dead Sea sediment. You see how I'm doing that? So Dead Sea level curve calibrated the last 4,300 years with beach ridges, radiocarbon sexual history, archaeology, and seismites. Let me talk about some of these numbers. The high levels are driftwood deposits associated with caves and with beach ridges, high beach ridges. And I know there's a high level of the lake about 4,200 years ago. So it works out to about 2,000, a little more than 2,100 BC. And then I can see other high levels, okay, because of driftwood deposits. And then I see these low stands of the lake where the water was low. This trough right here, about 2000 BC, another one about 1100 BC, and then here's turn of the centuries in from BC to AD, and so I can see these beach ridges and the high stands of lake and a number of things that are evidenced in what are called the seismic record. So that's Steve Austin's Dead Sea level curve, okay, made from mud, calibrated during the last 4,300 years. Now, the monks were really interesting people. We tend to say, oh, he's just a monk. What do? They just sit around and meditate all day, right? No, they didn't. They took nature walks and they went down to the Dead Sea all the time and they drew maps of the shoreline, and they were very active in making observations. So about back to 1100 AD, we have real accurate renditions of the shore of the lake. And so back 1,000 years ago, we have a good observational record. Well, then going back then, before the monks, you had the Arab period where lake levels low, and there was hard times in the medieval period, and that was followed by the so-called Little Ice Age. But there was a high stand of the lake in number 10, that's associated with high water level, and that's 850 AD, and then it goes back to features. But now this is the part of the curve that I'm most interested in, so I'll talk about that. 570 AD, at a church in what's called present Jordan. The Madaba is a city. The Madaba map as the Church of St. George. And what did they have in the chapel at Madaba? They didn't have carpeted chapel floor with pews sitting there on it. They had a map of the Holy Land, and they taught biblical geography from the map that was the floor of the church. And it's 250,000 tiles, and that's the map of the floor of the church. And that's preserved. And so it's really interesting to see about that. But you see the whole Dead Sea, and the northern basin and the southern basin are filled. So you know that's a level above 402 meters below sea level. And you can see grain ships on the sea. You can see fish going up from the Dead Sea, and you see occasionally a fish going down, but not too far down. And so you see there's the Jordan River. Okay, on biblical maps, north is usually to the left, okay, and east is up. And here is Jerusalem, and there's Bethlehem, you see. And in Greek text, all over the map is the explanation of the geographic features. There have been books written on the Madaba map, whole books written on, what the geographic features indicate is related to history. And so that's the Madaba map. This most interests me, Toyota Agios L, to the honor of Saint L. And the map tiles are broken away, but who could that be? Saint Lot. Okay, so down at the southeast corner of the Dead Sea is a sanctuary with a roof on it, Red Sea, a Dead Sea map, and it has the sanctuary of Holy El. And so we think it's Holy Lot. And it's sitting right next to Balak Zura. Zura was what? Zoar, biblical Zoar. And so lots of the places on the map of biblical significance, and that's how they taught Bible geography 570 AD. Lakeshore archaeology sites, for example, there's 2 of them there. Number 7 is an ark site that is basically a pier in the harbor with a dock. And so they know what the lake level was at that particular level. And evidently it was something like this, a building next to the shore of the lake, and you drive your cargo ship into there. And they know about number 5, that's an earlier dock and pier system from pottery, and it's iron 2B pottery. And so you see how pottery can be used to establish the level of the lake, that kind of thing. And there's also there's other dock structures that show the level of the lake. Now, if you look at the curve, I can show you parts of the curve from the high stand. The high stand at 880 meters is right there, the high stand, and that's the Byzantine period after the Madaba map. Number 9 shows you the Madaba map. Number 10 shows you the high level of the lake then. And it was higher than now, okay? And so it was a wet and rainy period, but short-lived there during the Byzantine time. If you want to think about it, what could that be? Do you know about the Vikings? They went to Norway, and what did they do? They conquered a lot of the land, and then they went on to Greenland, and they liked beer, and so they grew hops and barley in South Greenland. Okay, probably during that wet and warm time associated with the Byzantine, that's called the Byzantine warm period. And I remember, well, I won't talk specifically about it, but I remember certain people saying that 1990 was the warmest year in the last 2,000 years. And no, not according to my understanding of that. Okay, so it was warmer and wetter in the Byzantine period than it is now. And of course, we hear a different story frequently. Another beach ridge back there at 270 meters below sea level, and that's a high stand beach, and that's seen at 𝘎𝘪𝘴 𝘏𝘪𝘴, and there's another high stand beach, 𝘎𝘪𝘴 at 350 meters, very high level, 350 meters below sea level. So those high stand beaches are there. Do you see how the thing is calibrated? And the other thing is they found driftwood deposits, and those have been dated by radiocarbon. And there's problems with the radiocarbon dating, especially associated with back before 1000 BC. But here's beach ridges. Okay, beach ridge down here. There's the beach ridge, and that's a beach ridge at 1000 BC. Here's another beach ridge at 1000. Another. So you can see those elevated and depressed landforms in the shallow water features of the bottom of the lake. And calibration of driftwood, like in the salt caves, especially from these two recent two high stands of the lake. When there's no trees living along the shore of the Dead Sea, but from the Jordan River, driftwood comes in, and it's deposited even in the southern basin in salt caves. And so evidence of the floating of logs provides shoreline data. And then calibration by seismite. This is there's a series of earthquakes that go from about 750 BC, the mid-8th century, up here to about 1456 AD, and this sequence of earthquakes is seen at depth in the sediment, and so that can be calibrated, and that's what I've done there to calibrate parts of the curve, is using seismites, and those are the crinkled sediment layers. Like this is the sediment layer from 33 AD. You know any earthquake that could be involved with 33 AD? Yeah, there's one described in Matthew. Okay, so yeah, and the 31 BC earthquake is a big earthquake, and it's described in historical records as well, Josephus, that type of thing. So Steve Austin's Dead Sea curves, you see how it's produced. Okay, now what I like to do is not just produce Dead Sea historically calibrated curves. I'm interested in how it is impacted, how it impacts history. And so the Bible history, I believe, synchronizes with the lake level curve, and that's what some of the details show you here. And yeah, high stand at 350 is associated 350 meters below sea level. That high stand is associated with the early bronze cities that are all around the Dead Sea. I'll talk about those specifically. But then there's a drop to over 17 meters depth at Wadi Zelim. And so down there, something like 410 meters below sea level, 10 meters of sediment, is this, a beach ridge, a beach evidence, shallow water evidence. And then it rises again believe it or not, in the period of about 1400 BC to a high level, and then it drops precipitously down to another beach ridge associated with the drought period during and then you can see the rest of the curve. Anyway, how does this calibrate? This is the time of Abraham. And are there droughts during the time of Abraham? Yeah, you know the story of Abraham. In fact, he took advantage of drought. He became a successful well driller and well digger during the time of the drought, and he found water, and he could water his flocks, and he could be in the high-level country and be impervious to the famines and droughts that were out there. So this is the time of Abraham, and then what is this? This is the 430 years between the time of Egypt to the children of Israel leaving Egypt, the Exodus. And so that 430-year period is the time the children of Israel were in Egypt. And then the Exodus is something like 1446 BC. And what happened? The Exodus occurred, and then there's 480 years following that, and the temple is built in 1 Chronicles 6. So the whole period is here. So what does this represent? That represents the conquest of Canaan by the Israelites. And then what happens? Did they follow the covenant? No, they didn't follow the covenant. And so what was the conditional covenant related to? Climate. And what happened to the children of Israel? They endured drought. And God said he would turn the dust of the land into powder. And boy, look at this. During the period of time of the judges, all the drought occurred. And this whole was established back down to the beach level, about 417 meters below sea level. That's where that beach ridge is, and that's the time of the kings of Israel right there. During the time of the kings of Israel, it was continually advancing water level, and so that's beneficial. And even though there's drought, they were sustained. And during the time of the period of the kings, what's called Iron 2B, this is the Iron Age right in here, Iron 2B, the lake level is now high. There was a population explosion, and then, of course, you know the rest of that story. There's the captivity of the northern kingdom in Assyria, and captivity of the southern kingdom in Babylon. And so that's interesting. Anyway, the features are declining water level during the time of Hezekiah, especially, And what did Hezekiah do? He drilled a tunnel to provide water to the residents of Jerusalem. A lot of excavation shows that. And then the lake level did advance again. And during the period of the change of the century from BC to AD, that's the time when the Dead Sea level rose, and at about 490 meters below sea level is where that was. That's the period when what? Jesus came, and John the Baptist is preaching baptism on the Jordan River, and the lake level's high because there's all of that shoreline evidence, especially from archaeological ruins. And then, so Jesus came in the fullness of time, and what? Galilee was well watered, let's just put it that way. And then what happened after about 500 AD, that's when the lake level's low, and then it rose quite abruptly up to about 850 AD. And then we went into the Little Ice Age, this period here, and of course the downdraw of the lake just recently because of the man-made water. So here, water harvesting in the Jordan River. So there's the biblical history shown to you. Celebrate how good God's word really is. So you can see that the Bible history synchronizes well with lake level curve. And you know, Abraham is in the middle of a drought, okay? And there's all kinds of reasons for him to go to Egypt, but he is supposed to not go to Egypt. He's supposed to stay out of Egypt. And during the time of the period of the judges, that's the period of downdraw. During the period of the kings of Israel, rise in lake level. So these things fit nicely together. So celebrate how good God's word really is. Thank you.